Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear brothers, sisters, friends, and yes, the foes out there. Welcome to another episode of the Blood Brothers podcast with your host, Didi Hussein. Before I introduce today's esteemed and erudite guest who's joining us all the way from Dallas in United States, I want to remind all our avid listeners and followers and viewers to subscribe to the Five Pillars YouTube channel and to find us on all the usual audio podcast platforms. Today's guest, he is a established and celebrated historian, a theologian, an academic, one of the most influential figures in the Muslim da'wah scene in the Western world. He is the resident scholar of an epic mosque, epic being the acronym for the East Plano Islamic Center in Dallas, and he is the dean of the Islamic Seminary of America, and that is none other than Sheikh Dr. Yasir Qadi. Sheikh, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I ask Allah Azza wa Jal that all of these titles actually mean something on the Day of Judgment. And in this world, these are simply words that you say. Most important is our actions and ikhlas. And every time somebody introduces with all of these lengthy titles, we have to be very clear here that these titles mean nothing on the Day of Judgment. May Allah Azza wa Jal grant us all ikhlas and taqwa. So this, it was, I don't like these long titles, but anyway, inshallah, let's, I hope you're doing well, Dilly. I think we have met once, I think in the past.
We have met very briefly once in the past. You have been interviewed by my colleague, Roshan Saleh, many years ago for Press TV.
Colleague, I didn't know that. Okay, mashallah.
Yes, he is indeed. And of course, we have many mutual brothers between us. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
Sheikh, we've got a lot to cover today, a lot of ground to cover. But what I tend to do with guests who happen to be people of knowledge, I like to warm up the session with some quick fire questions, right? I want you to think of a boat journey that you're going on. 7 days on a boat journey. And you have to take one of the two individuals with you on this journey. Now, some of these figures are historical. They have passed. Some are still alive. Some of the answers I think I guessed right, but others I'll be interested to know who you would choose. And you do have the opportunity to just briefly elaborate on some of the choices if you feel the need to. You ready?
Okay. Bismillah, okay.
7 days, boat journey, 10 companions. Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal or Imam al-Shafi'i?
You're going to get me into trouble, bro.
Come on. And you can't say both, you can't say neither. It has to be one of the two, Sheikh. Come on. It's a 7-day journey. You need to spend 7 days with them.
Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, because I would want to narrate a hadith to him and just get the barakah of listening and narrating a hadith.
Throughout your adult life and your journey in pursuit of knowledge, you have generally, if I'm correct, please correct me if I'm not, identified as a Hanbalite in most affairs?
Yes, and that's why I wanted to make the clarification. It's not because of the fiqh issue. If it was for the fiqh issue, frankly, I would have chosen Imam al-Shafi'i. But simply to get the barakah of the ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ, I would have chosen Imam Ahmad for this hypothetical, theoretical journey.
Okay. Obviously, I know, when it comes to your lectures, me personally, I very much enjoy your historical lectures, mashallah, tabarakallah. So I have to throw in some historical figures there as well. If you had to take one of the khulafa, Umar ibn Abdul Aziz or Harun al-Rashid?
Frankly, I would choose Harun al-Rashid simply because the fact that he was at a later stage means that he was exposed to more types of interactions with other civilizations and had to make more difficult decisions. In terms of piety, of course, Umar ibn Abdul Aziz would be the ideal in between those two, but my curiosity would be piqued by the circumstances of the early Abbasids, so I would choose Harun al-Rashid.
Okay. Salahuddin al-Ayyubi or Alp Arslan?
Again, I'm going to go off on a limb here. Because we don't know that much about Alp Arslan as compared to Salahuddin, I personally would have chosen Alp Arslan because, of course, again, in terms of grandiose and whatnot, what Salahuddin accomplished cannot be compared, but Alp Arslan is a unique individual with a very exotic background, right? Salahuddin Ayyubi is mainstream, Kurdish, Arab, whatnot. Alp Arslan is coming from the far left and just making an impact. So me personally, I would have chosen Alp Arslan. I've never thought about these questions. This is intriguing. Okay.
I'm sure this is one that you've had before, or one maybe you have even thought about in terms of your study periods. Imam Ghazali or Shaykh ibn Taymiyyah?
So obviously, there's no question that my personal association would want me to be with Ibn Taymiyyah if that's the only opportunity that I have. There's no question. I mean, I would love to pick Imam al-Ghazali's brain, but you can't compare. Like the tarbiyah that I've had for the last 25 years. Obviously, Ibn Taymiyyah, I still view him, despite all what my critics say, I still view him as being the Shaykhul Islam and the person that I ascribe to the most overall. My ideology is Taymiyyan, so how can I possibly give it the opportunity to be with the legend himself?
Okay. Sultan Fatih or Sultan Aurangzeb?
Oh, come on, Aurangzeb, man. Come on, I'm Desi by blood, like there's just whatever Fatih has done, but to meet one of the sultans of the Mughal Empire, and yeah, definitely. I mean, that's a no-brainer for me.
Okay. Umar Mukhtar or Imam Shamil?
That's a good one. That's a good one.
We're getting closer to our time.
Either one. Wallahi, there's no... Yani,
you have to choose one, Sheikh. Come on. Choose one. You have to choose one.
Yeah, I mean, I would personally Umar al-Mukhtar simply because, okay, so again, both are very similar, but because Umar al-Mukhtar was against the Europeans and because we are more connected to Europe and Europeans, I would feel more at home listening to his stories and benefiting from him. Obviously, Imam Shamil was against the Russians and whatnot, and that's a different civilization that me and you and others haven't directly interacted with to the level that we've interacted with Europeans. So very, very bizarre point, but I would choose somebody whose stories I could relate to more, if you get my drift.
Khair, okay. Jamal al-Din Afghani or Muhammad Abduh?
I mean, Afghani, I don't think there's much that I would have benefited, from him. I think he's a very interesting character to study, but I have little desire. Even Abdu, I mean, the both of them are interesting. I don't disrespect them, but I don't have the level of respect I would do for the next generation. So obviously Rashid Rida is somebody that I actually connect with a lot personally. So because of that, Abdu had a more impact on Rida than Afghani. So I would choose Abdu for that reason. But yeah, not that much of a difference.
Okay, then in that case, Rashid Rida or Abu Ala al-Mawdudi?
Again, Rashid Rida is a bit more exotic for me. He's a generation before Maududi. Maududi, actually, I have a personal connection with. My father was, met him a number of times and was his part of the organization. So my father was a part of Jamaat in the 50s in Pakistan.
Okay.
And so, and I've met many of his students, his sons. I know them personally. So he's not as exotic of a figure for me as Rashid Rida. So I'd have to choose Rashid Rida for that reason. Also, with my utmost respect to Maududi, great person, but Rashid Rida was an allama. Yani he had studied, whereas, Maududi, may Allah have mercy and bless him and whatnot, he was self-taught. There's a big difference between the two.
Okay. Abdullah Azzam or Mullah Omar?
Azzam, without a doubt. Azzam, without a doubt. He is a legend.
Okay. Bringing it very closer to home and closer to our time. Imam Omar Sulaiman or our Ustad Abu Isa Rahmatullah?
You're going to get me into trouble, bro. In America, we have the Constitution and there's something called the Fifth Amendment, right? The Fifth Amendment means you don't have to incriminate yourself. So I'm going to call the Fifth over here and I'm going to say I refuse my constitutional rights. Both of them are Habib and dear friends. And if I were to choose the one over the other, I'm never going to hear the end of it as long as I live. So I'm going to choose my constitutional Fifth Amendment and zip it.
Okay. So then in that case, since you've taken the Fifth, you have to allow me to ask you a sub-question in that regard. Which of our two dearest mashayikh of the two tend to hold you to account more with regards to your public works?
That's something that is separate from the first question, and it is Abu Isa for one simple reason that I've known him for way longer. I'm close friends with both, but I've known Abu Isa while we were both students. When he was in Mauritania and I was in Medina, he would come visit, and Egypt as well. And so we've known each other since we were students of knowledge. I mean, it's been 25 years, like a long time known each other, Whereas Imam Umar Sulaiman, I've only, he's obviously much younger than the both of us. He's a decade or so younger, and we only got to know each other after I'd returned from Medina, and we're both active in da'wah. So that level has not been established for that reason, but he is a good friend of mine.
So I will now let the viewers and listeners to decide based on the Fifth and on that explanation who you might, if it was a life and death situation. Last but not least, your 10th companion. Who would you take? Mufti Taqi Usmani or Sheikh Al-Qardawi?
I wish you had added one more person, the one that I consider my main mentor that is still alive, that is Sheikh Salman Al-Auda, but you didn't bring him in. May Allah facilitate his release.
Ameen.
You know, I'd have to say Sheikh Qaradawi simply because he's a generation older than Mufti Taqi, and so there's a lot more to benefit from it. Otherwise, they're both at a caliber that I respect and admire, but simply because Sheikh Qaradawi is 30 years older, he would automatically get the respect that that age brings about.
Okay, Jazakumullah khair. How did you find picking your guests for this hypothetical boat journey?
I've never had this icebreaker done to me. So interesting. Okay. It's an interesting exercise, and inshallah, I benefited, and inshallah, I'm going to use it in a future Q&A that I do. I'll also take this copyrighted version of an icebreaker and then choose figures that are even more controversial, if you like. You tried to choose some. Alhamdulillah, you didn't go too far.
Alhamdulillah. Sheikh, listen, let's kick today's podcast off with an area of conversation which you have discussed in great detail previously in previous podcasts, like our season 1 partners, the Mad Mamluks. When you did the most recent episode with them, I believe it was last year at some point,